right, I think we are ready to rock and roll. Let me just obtrusively adjust my mic boom. I think I nudged it out of the way with my coffee. Hello, everybody. OdatNurd here. Welcome to another Sublime Text live coding live stream. We are going to be working on hopefully finishing up the external diff functionality. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. In my override audit package, here's the general outline for the evening, the code that we have been building up over this period of time. Let's see if we can't get this thing maybe actually as part of the override audit package proper and not in this file that's hanging off, excuse me, in my user package. We kind of have all of the moving parts that we need in order to get this going. We're mostly stymied by the fact that we're working in the version 1 code base of the override audit package, which is something that we're getting ready to drop in favor of the heavily refactored version 2. So we need to implement this in a way that's not dumb and still works, but also something that will be fairly easy to pull out into the refactored version of the code. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and jump on in. Fun fact, the key that I have set up to do that is F12, which also tends to make Chrome display its developer tools, even if that's not the window that has the focus, which does not seem exactly kosher. But nevertheless, we shall continue. So as we can see here, we have a little bit of an agenda here. What we want to do is double check the error checking in this diff thread code just to see, because I think I mentioned this last stream. I believe I uncovered a potential bug in the Sublime version of its exec code that was kind of doing something that I think was causing problems. Be jiggered, if I can remember exactly. Let's try this, as a matter of fact. Just to see what we're doing here, I'm going to... Is there an LP exec? There is. Now, let's look here. This is, I think, where I would have fixed this. Oh, I didn't do anything there. Now, see, I have a distinct memory of while I was working on making an external build system, or making a custom build target, I should say, not an external build system. I can see external all over the screen here. I found an issue, which I would have thought I fixed, but I don't think I did. And I think I mentioned this in the last stream. Say we're on Linux, so what happens if a path is provided to the thing when you're executing it, then it saves the current path in the org path variable, and it assigns a new path to be the path that was provided so that you can swap a new path in. Then it goes on to make a copy of the environment to use in this item, as we can see here. If we were on Linux, it would hit sysplatform. It would use this popen call to execute the program. And then once that's done, if there was a path, it sets the environment back. Now this os.environ path is literally changing the actual environment of the current process. And I'm pretty sure I discovered a situation in which if this subprocess popen triggers an error of some sort, then the exception is propagated up out of here because there's not a try in here. And as a result, it leaves the path broken because I was severely confused by it. Now, I thought I had fixed that. So this is actually, I believe, one of the items on there. Double check if popen can throw an exception because I do not want to have that in our code if that's going to cause a problem. So I'm going to just open a terminal and throw it over here. Sorry, a browser. And I think I could do pydocs for subprocess.popen. And yeah, that would be that one. Let's see, sequence of stuff, if it's a string, otherwise it's a stuff, it's a thing. The shell argument, shell is true. The executable plus a spot. If restore signals is true. If universal new line, startup. Well, let's say, how about this? Can Python popen throw exceptions? I can't think off the top of my head what it would actually. A value error will be raised if popen is called with invalid arguments. Well, that's the wrong type thing. Did that say something about that in here? Oh. Exceptions raised in the child process before the new program is started to execute will be re-raised in the parent. Additionally, exception objects will have one extra attribute. The most common is this: we're trying to execute a non-existent file. When trying to execute a non-existent file, does that mean when the program? No, that can't be right. What's to do? Well, let's just test out the theory and see what we can contrive here. Now we're on Linux, so that part is going to happen. How have we been running this with that, I think? Yep. Okay, so that seems to be invoking our external diff type option. If I did that, let's see. That says external diff finished with return code 137. That did not trigger a problem. I'm not surprised by that. Oh, actually, would it be that one that it's actually trying to run? Because that's the first item. Error while diffing, error no to, no such file or directory. Okay, so that's not. I can't for the life of me remember exactly what happened here that caused it to happen. I know it took me a while to figure out what the hell was going on. Well, I guess for our purposes, we should maybe just leave well enough alone there. So let's look. We're actually going to be, if I gave this correct thing, the focus. Let's go ahead and hide the sidebar for now. I don't think we care. Oh, that's interesting. With no sidebar, the diff. This is the new diff view in the latest dev build, and it seems to go away when there's no sidebar. Works in those files. Maybe if I trigger an update. Well, that's kind of an unfortunate turn of events. Let's do that. And now this is in under Git control, so we can totally see that there is a lot of stuff that's different here. I'm going to have to report that one. That's mildly irritating. Incidentally, this is the first take on perhaps running. I have Git Gutter. I'm going to just do that for the time being. I have Git Gutter disabled right now. So I'm just relying on the diff pop-ups here to know about things, and we can use these new keyboard shortcuts, if I can remember what they are, to jump forward and back between them. Yeah, and note that it actually knows the point in the buffer where the update happened. It doesn't necessarily know just the line, which is nice. So that is weird. Only for that one, huh? Okay, well, that's wild stuff, but that is not getting anything done. In any case, if we look over here, now let's size this one down a little bit so we can have these two here. This is the threads.py thing, which is what currently has all of our threading in it. And ooh, that's annoying. So we fix that since we're going to be in here anyway. This is a spinner that's used, as I pointed out on previous thing, to when there's a thread that's going to take a long time to execute, it runs a spinner with a particular text that you provide. And background worker threads, which are used to gather the package list so that people that have a lot of Sublime Text packages don't hang the UI while they're running commands. Use this background worker to do stuff, and it automatically has a spinner. Now, we're not necessarily doing any direct error handling there. This one, do I have a... I don't even have log in here, huh? This one's going to be tricky to pull out on account of I got a lot of different things in here. So that's why this is the first thing on the list, is to double check that this is ready to be integrated. I imagine if I was to look at override audit.py, and let's go jump up to the top here, it's got submodules. This loads, then it loads submodules. So if submodules wanted to pull stuff from us, I'm imagining there would be no end of unfortunateness in that. So what I don't actually know is how I'm reporting errors here. I have underscore log. Is that the only thing I'm using here? I think it probably is. I got to find some places where some errors might happen. Log deleted, log confirm, unable to diff as a dialog, no changes detected in the status. I really think that's what we want. I'm gonna assume that since all of these things are coming out of the lib folder, basically the idea here is that if you're not using automatic package reloader, if you modify threads.py like so, Sublime doesn't reload that because it's not in the top level. In which case, if you just reload this, you still have, when it does it's from lib.threads import, it still has the version of the code that was there the first time it loaded, because it doesn't know that there's a new module. So this is some code that is in here that triggers a reload of those items, but only if they've already been loaded. So saving here causes it to also reload that file over there, which is a sort of a workaround to not have to have that particular package. And make sure that things actually all work out for you. So if we want to actually display log errors in this, and we need the log function, I'm not even, to be perfectly honest, sure how you would import something from a prior level. Oh, that's broken too. Let's do this. Import ... override audit as OA, let's say. Oh, it does not like that, huh? So I imagine that's going to cause a problem. No, it doesn't look like it. That's, how about this? That is not how that works, huh? That right there is an unfortunate turn of events. This is the googly type thing. Python import module from parent directory. Looks like something I've searched many times. I would have thought that it was ... Do do do. Okay, add it to Python path. Oh, maybe I'm maybe I should have said from ... import override audit as OA. Does that work better? That loads. Now I guess the question here just to test this stuff. Now I think that I'm also going to get hosed because I don't think I can say that because I don't think that necessarily shows up. I'm going to do that. I'm going to reload this whole package. I'm going to, whoops, look on the package report. Oh, well, what do you know? That seems to work. Who trusts that? Not me. I'm quitting and I'm starting again. We're off to a rousing start in a game of does OdatNurd know a lot about Python? Although I could have told you that no, I don't. Is this the OA test browse? Totally nothing I need to worry about right now. OA partial diff is also broken. Oh. Okay, so yeah, that's totally not working. Let us just temporarily go to my package folder, mvoa partial diff.py to OA partial.y dot disabled mv. We need test browse sorta in order for that to work. But well, let's quit that and restart it, shall we? That's just that one being broken now. From as OA. Oh, look, it's totally happening twice, but that's the. How many times is that error going to show up, man? Oh, yeah, and XPath. Let's remove that thing. I was helping someone diagnose a problem. Let's quit and restart. And just verify everything seems to be good up there right until it gets to that line. So that's the one that's bust, and then the same thing happens again. And the same thing happens a third time. Well, that seems to be nicely optimized. To be honest, I'm not sure what the appropriate solution for this particular problem is. Do I need 3 dots? Is that the problem? Showing my ignorance here. Causing me confused that the automatic package reloader doesn't want to auto reload anything anymore. Let's quit and restart. Yeah, no, it doesn't like that. How about that one? Indented relative import beyond top level package. Okay, so no, we want that one. Cannot import name override audit. Why would that be? Is that not? If it's there, it goes out. That's that. Of all the things I expected to be stuck on in this, that was not one of them. So, well, let's not worry about that, I guess, just for the time being. We'll remove that line just to get things working again. And let us, again, we'll hide that and hide that diff, because I guess at some level that doesn't matter in the short term. I'll do that a little bit easier. I'll do that. Copy that and paste it here. Oh. Really? That doesn't work anymore? There we go. And copy that to here. Now, what sort of stuff from over here do we actually need? Let's see. OS, that's used in there. Yes. Stat, definitely used in there. We use it to see if we can do stuff. Sys, that looks like it's needed. Threading we already have. Subprocess, I'm willing to bet that's important. Temp file, no, but make. Oh, that's not needed here anymore. That's nice. Okay, let's copy all those ones out then. Like so. Now, we can put prints in here for the time being. It's not the greatest. That one we actually want to be a print. That one we don't. We could actually pass this the log function as part of its init method to solve that particular issue in the short term. But that doesn't seem like the greatest way to go. Now, if that was the case, and now that I restarted, do that, save that. It seems to be okay. Just for test purposes, I'm going to. What happens if I do this? Anything good? It only comments out the one? No, it comments out everything. Swankadoodle-doo. So I'm going to save that. And if I quit and restart, it should blow up like nobody's business. I just realized I'm referring to the console on the right there, in my little console window, so that I don't have to keep opening this one. But that does not help people who are viewing the stream. Hello, by the way. But there are no errors, so this seems to load, and I think this should cause a problem. Oh, yeah, because there is a that should not be there. That's not the key I want. That's the key I want. Thus. Save that. Reload that. Oh, was I? Oh, I might not have. I might have hosed myself with that whole thing. But we'll test that out in just a second. So if I run the command. External diff there is not defined. Right. Great. That's exactly what we want, because we want to say from override. Whoops. override audit.lib.threads import external diff thread thusly. And then when I push the key and say default, paste from history, boom, that is showing my diff on that. So that's good. That means, theoretically speaking, this code no longer needs to be here because it's over there. So we can take all of this code and remove it from this. The idea is I'm going to get this thing out of my entire user package to begin with. I can reload in there, right? Okay. So again, could I say from dot dot import override audit and reload, and it seems to work. Now this is totally that whole parent-child thing, which I think is probably kicking me in the yannies right now. Yeah, that still does not work. Same as that, right? I believe. And I'm just doing this again because I realized that I was testing it by reloading that file, which is not the same as reloading this file, which definitely says it can't do that. From dot dot override audit import log. That's totally a different error message than I got before. Why can't it import the name log? Because this one relies on that one and this one hasn't fully loaded yet. I'm going to guess that's the reason for that's probably why that doesn't work. The first thing this one does is try to import the code in the threads. Doing that causes threads to be loaded. The first thing it tries to do is import that name. It can't import that name because until it gets to the appropriate part of this file, that name doesn't exist in the module yet. I wonder if theoretically I could move this log up in the file. It does not seem like the way to go. So to do fix chicken and egg problem. Just so we remember that's something that we need to fix. But with all of that being said, this is something that only needs to be here for debugging purposes. So let's do that. I don't think I have one up in here, do I? No, I did for a long time until I had the genesis of removing the callback before doing the timeout here. Because if you set timeout for self.callback, this thread is held in memory forever because it's holding a reference to its own callback. And the callback refers to it. It's a whole bad scene. Shell command path end working dir. Raise errors. That one's just there so because that mimics what the standard exec command does, so you know what it's actually trying to run. We don't need to say that, I don't think. But having said that, if we looked at, is there a, oops, diff package process diff. Oh, I guess it's third diff override. Generate diff and override in a background thread. Yeah, unable to diff of, no difference found. Override diff thread. Let's see what this bad boy is doing. Thread not given a package or override to diff. Oh, that might this might have a slightly different. No, this one doesn't. This is a thread that's in the done in the background specifically so that it can wait for that program to finish asynchronously. So that's okay. This one is actually something that might be interesting as an error, and that one is as well. But until we get the logging thing straightened out, there's not a hell of a lot we can do about that, right? I'm really tempted to pass a log function there. I think in the version 2 of the code, this is not a problem because that log code would be in a file that's different from the place that's trying to import the thread. So whatever hack we would use here is something that doesn't have to carry over into a newer version. Oh, that just seems so hacky though. But I do want to just get this out of the way. So this can't have a plugin loaded because it just can't. Um, not to put too fine a point on it, because it's something that is internal. It's not a top level plugin. I have noted in the past that plugin loaded and plugin unloaded is called the first time Sublime loads a module like that um, in response to someone importing it, but it's not called on reload, so it only works once. It doesn't work more than that. And I know a lot of work in this latest dev build has gone into fixing some issues in that area, but even if that was the case, we need it to work in older versions, so we definitely don't want to do that. But this does have a plugin loaded. So one wonders, could I... Oh, as override audit, we also... yeah, let's go ahead and add this right now before we forget. We want the background worker thread, and we want the external diff thread. Could we say in plugin loaded, external diff thread dot log equals underscore log? If we could do that, then over here, we might be able to say self.log externally diffing. This might be a nice hack around this. Now, in order to verify that this works, we're going to start it from a square, sorry, it's not a square schema, from a fresh start. There are no errors in the console here. Everything's nice and clean. If I did that and chose this, external diff thread object has no attribute log. Oh, that's right. Of course it doesn't, because I didn't name it underscore log. I named it that. Let's quit and restart. Okay. So that looks like it's doing something. I'm not calling log right, but what the hell did I do here? Well, here's an example usage of log. I need to, oh, there. Really? There's no instances of log not taking an argument? Well, no, that one does it. Unsupported operand types 4%. Wait, that's not the error I thought it was. Oh, is it because it's a class method? Oh. Right. It's getting a first argument of self now because of that. Oh, I was not expecting that. I don't suppose this would work. I mean, it seems highly unlikely that it would. Yeah. I don't really believe that actually reloaded anything, if we want to be perfectly honest. If I quit and restart, I don't think it'll work then either. Oh, that's too far. Default, there. Global name log is not defined. Yeah, so that's not the way to do it. I think I would need to do it to the module. Which is kind of unfortunate, because I would have to import lib.threads. Like something like import lib.threads as OA threads, for example. Just so here I could say OA threads.log equals that. How about that one? That'll probably do what I want. No module named lib. Oh, I probably could have included more dots there, like every other file that's in that list. This has been one of those weekends. From .lib import threads as OA threads. That's probably the way to do that, if I had to guess. So did that do what one would like? It said externally diffing. Okay, so now it's doing what we want. Fix chicken and egg problem. Currently, the top level plugin is forcing the symbol into our module inside of its plugin loaded method. And clearly, the easier thing to do here, now that I'm thinking about it, would have been to maybe put the log in this utils thing. Maybe. Because if it imported log from there and then did the other stuff, those two things don't rely on each other. Well, it's probably a better way to do it now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, let's do that one. Okay. That's going to make that look a little bit nicer. So let's go to utils. We'll throw that in there. Oh, you know what? We'll do it up here. And such. Okay, now that was there and that was there. We could say remove all of that and say from dot utils import underscore log, replace that, come back down to this line that is different, where we would again use underscore log because that's how it's being used everywhere else. And over here, because log isn't there, we don't need to do this because that's awful. Like so. Now, the other thing I suppose to test here is to find the text import dot star underscore log and open files and folders and see what we find. Hang on just a second. Sorry, itchy ear. Okay, that seems like it's probably good. Everything being in this one module is probably the nice way to do that. So we can quit that and restart and see that. Oh, I forgot to take the line out of. I'm still getting used to those keys. What are they again? Control dot. That line doesn't need to be there anymore. That causes problems. Oh, it's broken goodly. There we go. How about that? So that looks like what we want to have happen there. Okay, so let's quickly figure what we did so we can commit that as a change. Not that one, not that one, not, oh yeah, that's part of that file. That's okay. None of that. Oh, sorry. We're going to add this line to utils.py. And we are going to stage this hunk, which moves the utils to the top so that the log can come in before everything else. Not that it really matters, I just like it better that way. So we'll stage this line, and we'll stage this line. So that one stays out because that's not there yet, and we'll stage this hunk as well. So if we look at what we have staged, we have the utils adding the log, and we have this moving that line to the top, adding log and removing that, and then say shift the log function to the utils file. In order to fix some upcoming chicken egg problems with imports, this moves the log function out of the main plugin file and into the utils file instead, so that other modules can import it if they need to. And I'm pretty sure I probably did something like this as part of the BSR, because all this one override audit.py file split out into, roughly speaking, 1 million files. Additionally, I've also thought that typing commit messages here in this is probably not that scintillating as a video type thing. So if you don't like this sort of thing, let me know in the comments section below, or hit me on Twitter at OdatNurd. I could actually just create the short version and leave that part out, and then come back and amend all of the commits after the stream is completed. See what we think of that. So now we have things like we want. So what we can do is we need to do that. I do not think we do. What we might have to do perhaps is remember that we can call log. It takes a message. It gets any particular arguments that might be there. After that, we can say status is true to put it in the status line, dialog to add it as a dialog, and if you don't specify either of those, it just goes to the console. Okay, so that's good. So let's come back over here, and let's see what we would be doing. Now, we do not, again, want to do that. I think someone's going to know what's happening, I would imagine. We have base and override, right? So what we could actually do here is say underscore log externally diffing. Now, do we really need to say the name of the program? No, because that print statement above is doing it. And I'm using print there specifically and not log to try to mimic what the exec code does. %s That's not going to look particularly nice. Base self.base self.override. Like so. Instead of that, we don't need to put that in the status line because the person knows what file they're diffing. This is just to let us know. And I don't even know if these file names are ones that we want to put in here because I believe they would be fully qualified names. But we'll just leave that for the time being until we see what it looks like and see what we can do about that. And it seems like we might want to, this one we can underscore, oh, whoops, we can, stop it. We can underscore log that one. That's a different format than we have been using, so let's say %d. This is also something that was fixed. Oh, no. Let's actually keep that the way it was, because I think there's some magic there. That one's just going to go into the console, because overall, probably, it's always going to log it. We don't need to harass the person. But this one, we might actually say dialog equals true on this one. Oh, and that takes it right to the bitter edge. And those are all of the places where something like that could happen, right? Now I'm going to open my console over here. Now let's quit and restart and just test out what we've got so far. So if I was to choose to diff that, I see what I did for that one. I can quit that. And if I looked in the console, we can see it saying override audit externally diffing the blah, the temp file, and packages makefile make.sublime build. I don't know if that's actually interesting. If we have been told that it's running that, we don't need to see the file names either. So I'm going to say, for our purposes, no, we don't want to see. Oh, skipping between changes doesn't help if the entire thing is changed, right? So we're going to take that one out. We don't need to see that because we're seeing right there. And again, if I clear that console, when we do a diff, we already saw it in the console, we see that it's running user local bin meld. I'm going to turn off the word wrap in here. We see it's running meld on those two files. And So we don't need it to say that it's externally diffing because it's clear from that. And this one is here just for our own edification. Um, maybe I do want to log this one. Yeah, let's also log that one. Am I doing that wrong? I should be doing that, shouldn't I? Let us reload that just so we can see. Okay, so I think I need to reload in this one for it to notice. So now it says running. Oh, why does this? Why? That really should have reloaded that. But you know, I've been having problems with that lately. That's how it used to work. Maybe those changes I talked about earlier caused that to be unhappy. So if I did this, we see that, who cares? We see that override audit says it's running that, and then the external diff returned. Okay, I think that's probably what we want for that. We'll take out that colon. Now, I was thinking that this should look like that because that's what exec does, but if we do that, it does look like what exec does. Someone might think that exec is running the command and not override audit. So let's not do that. And again, if we scoop on down here, that one, that's exactly what we want to have happen. We want it to say in the console just so that a person knows. Maybe we also say cleaned up temporary diff file just so the person knows that it went away. And here we could say log unable to clean up temporary diff file %s, and we might say self dot base. In that case, I think would be the one. I don't know if that's actually something that's useful. We can always redact those things out, right? So just again to see, we pick it. It says it's doing stuff. When we quit, external diff finished, and it cleaned up the temporary diff file. The name of the temporary file is listed, so we don't need to display the name because it's logged as part of the external diff. Now maybe someone's going to try to run 5 diffs at once. They're not going to be able to figure out which one. It's entirely unclear how much we actually care about this per se, or for that matter, that. Yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and redact those back out. Put that back to pass. That's fine. We'll quit and restart just to get to the appropriate thing. Now what we're actually also going to try here just to see. Oops. If I had this open, then that is not the correct one. So I guess I need to do preferences, package settings, override audit settings, and change this to melder. If we run the meld command, we see reloading settings because I saved the file. Override audit is running melder, and external diff finished with return code 127. Now, what we don't see is the actual fact that that didn't actually work. That seems like something that is probably useful, so maybe we shall include that as well. That file still over there? Yeah, okay. See, now I would have thought that that would have been an error while diffing. That's still the format call, right? There's other problems there. Let's see what exec does. Oops. We do a lot of research like yaw. Yeah. Why am I not get the exit code? Debug text. Where did that come from? Started off as okay, so that's just outputting that information, which is maybe or maybe not useful. That's created before the thing is executed. Oh, I should be catching an exception. Maybe that's the problem. No, that's what that thing is supposed to be doing, right? So let's quit and restart and see, 'cause maybe I boned something up there. Perhaps I did. I do not see that being an issue. Huh. You know, I kind of would have expected that. I should probably also say that. Because if that exception to handler ever actually triggers, result is going to be none. It doesn't help to say external def finished with return code none. I've seen that happen a time or two. Let's change this to %s and say stir error instead of all of that, which makes that look nicer. I think launch is the magic of the thing. Oh, yeah. Did we actually test? I think we did. What happens if the shell command is missing? So we get running that external, that word wrap in the console. I do not like the dev build that put that in place. I can add word wrap when I have a long line I don't want to see. External. It's definitely triggering an error, but it's doing it in a way where the message doesn't come out. Let's say this. Let's see if reloading actually works. No, it doesn't. I mean, it used to. Okay. Global name error is not defined. Oh. Right. So, I don't know why I pressed that key. Bald's shell command is required, and error while diffing shell command is required. So that seems to be doing something, except if it tries to run a program that doesn't exist, it's not triggering an exception. But that, oops, that part actually works. Let's redact that. And let us also come over here and save that. Now the issue might be that this thing needs to reload and not the package with that, because I'm pulling it in from here too. I think that was probably the reason why that wasn't working before. So yeah, that cleared that up. For some reason, using proc wait instead of poll does not raise an exception if the thing cannot be found. That might explain why that error I tried to capture earlier didn't work. You know, of all the things I expected to take an entire stream, this isn't one of them. And I apologize that I'm not as talkative in an engaging kind of way as I normally am. I've sort of had a bit of a rocky weekend. There was a death in the family that hit people very hard, and things are just not quite right, and I'm kind of inside my head a little bit about it. I'd like to know why doing this doesn't throw an exception when it does for, why do I have I can't remember why I had that open, but I'm pretty sure I don't care. Oh, wrong key. Let's look at that again. And we'll look at the async process class, because that's the one that actually runs this thing. If shell command else. So that doesn't even look like it's trying to catch an exception, to be perfectly honest. Now, this isn't using a thread the way we're using a thread, but this also has something that's continuously polling to see if the thing has died yet, and I didn't want to do that, which is the reason why, and also you can't kill the thing. Exit code is self-proc poll, which is what notices that it's dead. Oh, maybe the reason is we're not reading the standard output to see why it didn't work. Oh, that is an unfortunate level of events right there, let me tell you. Yeah, that I think that might be. It's not so much that it's throwing an exception to say that the shell said blah. It's just that before it exited, the actual running program said that to its standard output, and it got captured before it dumped the debug text out. So that's one thing. I don't know if there's a good way to capture standard out or standard error without using a thread. So for the time being, let's just leave well enough alone on that and say that if we just do one more quick scan over this code, we imported the stuff we need from there, fixed up that. Now we have an external diff thread. That's for debugging purposes, so we can tell when the thread is going away, but I don't think that that's something that we need in the general case. I'm gonna delete it because we're pretty sure we're gonna be able to tell if the thread goes away, or it always has. We're not really capturing anything currently, so we know the code we have now doesn't hold the thread forever like the other one did, so it's probably not worth being paranoid for. We're logging what we're running. So that's nice. We're actually executing the thing to the best of our ability. Our argument when we're preparing pops out the 3 possible items that could be used for platform specific and then appends them in. It gets all the variables for this window, adds in those 2, expands everything out into args, and run, prepares the argument dix, launches using the args that we have, waits for the thing to finish, and then if there was an exception, it does that, and if there was a result, it does that. I think you would use something like communicate. Interact with the process, send data to standard in, read data from standard out and error until end of file is reached. Wait for the process to terminate. The optional input argument should be data to be sent or none if no data should be sent. The type of input must be bytes or a string. Communicate returns standard out, standard error. Note if you want to send data to the process standard in. The chat process is not killed if the time would expire. Now, see, I have this vague recollection that there was some problem with race conditions. I don't know if that's actually now that I'm thinking about it. I remember people not wanting to do something like this because there can be weird race conditions where if you're waiting for data, it might never come. Maybe that only happens if you're sending input to it and waiting for output to come out, the asynchronous nature of the way those work. This will deadlock. Am I using wait there? Yeah. Wait for child process to terminate, set and return code. Okay, then we don't care about the timeout. This will deadlock when pipe and the child process generates enough output to a pipe such that it blocks waiting for OS. Yeah, maybe this is part of the issue. Use communicate to avoid that. I might be misremembering the problem that I was thinking of. I might actually have been thinking of something in C# code. We're definitely not passing a timeout. So we could capture standard out and standard error, and what would we actually do with those things? I mean, I guess we could take the standard error data and write it as to the console. Yeah, let's leave that as a further enhancement. If there's actually an exception raised, we dialogue it so that people know and we display the error message. And if there was a result, we say what happened. That won't happen if there was an error because then it didn't finish. We don't care if we say if the file was cleaned up or not. It seems silly to me to do so. So that means that this is the change that we need, which is going to stage and say add a new thread class for external diffing. And let's experiment with this. I'm just going to commit that and come back and throw a message in there after the fact and see how badly I can conflict my code by doing so. I'm assuming that rebases and other merges like that just change text of messages in the commit and not the actual contents of the commit are probably low key, but we'll find out about that, won't we? Okay, so we double checked error checking. I think again, maybe that might actually maybe be a problem, that thing I said, but we're not going to worry about it right now because the internal command doesn't worry about it either. Double check if popen can throw an exception. Seems like maybe it could, but it doesn't seem to happen. Looks like it's ready to be integrated. So what do we got? Move the thread into the lib folder. This should be included in the threads.py module with other threads. Done. Implement the external diff command. Now this is the part where we actually need to do a little bit of investigation because I don't remember exactly how this all shakes out when this thing is in one gigantic file. So if I came over to here, zoom this bad boy, and again we will turn off our diff for some reason by doing that. Oh, no, that's not the one we care about. We're going to need to leave this open because this stuff needs to be in the command we actually implement, but this is the file that we care about. And we don't get to see if there are any differences, but we know there are. There's that one. So let's see what we got here. Plugin loaded, unloaded. If you give it the name of a syntax, it'll return the package, full package name. That makes some lines nicer. We've already seen the setting code. Packages with overrides, it gets a list of all packages from a given package list for which there's at least a single override, unless you've told it to skip them. That's so that it can figure out from a list of packages which ones it needs to scan overrides in. This takes the name of a package and returns back a magic name that tells you if it's a complete override, if that complete override is expired, and otherwise it suffixes the file with, it prefixes the file with the shorter indications of whether it's a shipped, installed, or unpacked file. Actually open an override for editing, delete an override, thread freshen override. This is actually something that touches a file in the background. So if your override is older than the file in the underlying package and you look at it and you realize you still like your change, maybe just the package changed and the timestamp changed, but the content is the same, you can use this to touch your file to make it newer. Thread diff override is generating a diff for a given package and override in a background thread. And the reason it's doing that is because it needs to do that whole diffy type action. It could take a while. We want to make sure that that's not a problem. We don't need to do that in our external diff, so that's okay. We're going to output the diff to a view and apply the appropriate item, saying that it is in fact a diff. I would imagine that's what that thing is for. That's that thing in the settings group. Keys and values. We'll close that for the time being. I briefly remember that the idea there is for any given view, we have to keep track of the name. When an override is open, the name of the package that it came from, what the name of the override underlying file is, and whether or not it's looking at a diff or not. It would be true when it is a diff and false when it's not, and that's how the context command knows whether or not it should say if you should be able to diff or edit the override by looking at it. So that's okay. Find overrides, return the override belonging to a given package, and that's just so that it can skip you to places and be used to mark things. Extract pact override. What does that do? That must be that one that we created that we did not log. Huh. Yep. As a string, list of strings, right? That would be the thing that we're using over here. Yeah. Oh, it gets the name of a file. Okay. Should probably document that. Given a package information structure for a package and an override inside of that package, this determines the appropriate package file. This determines the package file to that the base file is contained in and extracts it to a temporary file whose name is returned. Good. Auto report trigger. That's for figuring out if it is time to automatically generate a report for expired overrides, which happens at startup. If you remember, if you were paying attention when I was looking at code earlier, working on terrible hacks, there's a call to this directly in the package loaded so that this happens right away. It also happens as part of a settings watcher when it notices that a package is coming out of the list of um, ignored packages. Which is all of this stuff here, and this also generates a file into your user package that is the version number of Sublime that you have so that it can detect when you are upgrading. And this is the settings change handler that determines if you've asked Override Audit to report things on unignore, then it figures out if there are any packages that were added recently that just came out, and it performs a check for those packages. So this is just a simple base class thread for gathering all of the information on all of the packages, which scans the packages folder, the installed packages folder, and the packages folder that's alongside the binary to find the name of all of the Sublime package files and all of the folders that could contain files and all the files that are contained inside those files so that it can know all about all of your overrides. The override diff thread diffs a specific package override in the background thread, which is the whole package version of the single override thread we saw above. And for the most part, this stuff all happens in the background, and underscore process happens after all of the package information is ready. And then it does that part in the background and shoots the data into a view, and life is good. Ditto for freshening things, does the same thing. That one's a little more work because it also has to find expired overrides and remove the little X in front of them. That needs to be fixed because that's broken. Report generation thread is a base class for generating all reports. It does all of the stuff like putting the stub header at the top that says when this package was reported after it knows the title, and sets the particular items into whether or not it should create a new view or use an existing view. It figures out, it makes a call that all other things generate, and then it calls set content to put in. So when these, like the package report thread, just needs to specify a process, and when this is done, it can call set content, which is actually does all the work of generating the report. So the boilerplate of how reports work is in report generation thread. A package report thread just needs to generate this information and this information for all packages it's already gathered. Overrides do the same thing, only here there could be two different kinds of reports because some there are definitely expired only and others that aren't. The bulk diff is like a diff of a single package, but it goes over multiple packages. Override audit package report command. That's the command that actually generates the report. Package report just makes a thread. Override audit report just makes a thread. Bulk diff just makes the thread. Override audit diff override command. Selective diff of a single override or package based on the provided arguments. The user will be prompted by a quick panel to select the value of any deleted arguments except bulk, which controls the output. Now this is the actual item. If you were to say diff override, when you did this, it has to ask us, because we did not specify a package, which package we need. We want to diff in. And then after we pick it, it needs to show us the list of overrides to see which one we actually want to do something with. And then it can show us the diff. You can also execute this command with this particular, and we'd have to look at the run method for it. You could give it the name of a package and the name of an override and whether or not it's bulk, and it'll just generate the report right away. So if you have a package that you constantly have overrides in or that you want to specifically check, you can totally run that command without being prompted. And this is an internal command. I don't think I have any examples of this without touching files to be in the distant past, but in the override audit report, if any of these files is older than the file in the underlying package, there's would be prefixed with a little X in square brackets to let you know that it's expired. And one of the options that you can use in there is to freshen it. So this can be used to find marks, generic marks in front of a file and remove them. That's right now the only thing it's used for is actually there can I think even be more than one character inside the square brackets and it only takes one of them out. I can't remember exactly. The only thing that uses that right now is the freshen code. The context helper figuring out oh yeah, because context menu items work differently. We see this override audit refresh override report and override audit refresh override report. Creating that command in a tab is different than creating it in a file because here it knows exactly this file is the right one. On a tab, it doesn't know. Instead, what it gets is a special thing that says what the group of the file is and what the tab of the file is. So that allows me, even when this file over here is the focused file, to do this and know that it's going to happen in the correct view. So this is a helper code that figures out how it should do that. And it also has other stuff like what kind of report this is. I think there's probably one in here that says if it's a diff or not, I would think. Oh, sorry, that's the is diff is none. For the context of this particular view, it returns package name if it's an override and if it's a diff. Override audit context override command. Okay, this is the one that we need to screw with. And we need to do this in a couple of different ways. And this is some sad. This right here is the thing that made me think I really don't like the way initially I thought having one context command for a context menu that just had an action key to tell it what it should do was a nice way to go. And after the fact, I realized this makes it kind of hard to put new things in. So I kind of don't like that. And parts of those reasons are this. When should a command be visible? Well, there's a lot of stuff here, isn't there? If the action is freshen, then this should only be visible if this is an override. If override group has view, override is none. I'm not entirely sure what that's doing without checking. One of the other things in that big refactor is some nicer stuff. If the action is toggle, return true if it's a diff, otherwise false. Everything else requires a package and override to be visible. I'm going to say this, or action equals toggle, open external. In that case, we only want the open diff externally command to be visible in the menu if this is a diff. We don't want it to appear for non-diff overrides. Now, I think in order to test all of this, I'm going to close that and that and that. Here's the other menus that we're going to have to meddle with, and we can see right there. Oh, that's the default settings down there, right? So if that was open over here, we don't care. We'll close that one. We close that one. Context, is there more than one of these? Make sure we have all of the files that we need here. Messages, no. Syntax, no. Diff settings, we probably want that one. That's the settings. Tab context. I think we also want that one. We'll see in just a second. Override audit, the command toggle. Yeah, that is good. We want both of those two things. So let's, in order to see, it's going to create an override report. And for our purposes, let's say we want to edit the override for that. So we have the actual override. We have, if I push Alt-O, it'll open a diff automatically for that. So this is a diff of the actual override. This is the override. This is an example. We also have, let's say, a package report, just because that's also something. And this is an example of a file that is a resource. It's in packages override audit, but it's not an override. So we can also verify that it doesn't appear there. So if we look here first, let's say that we're defining a new action called open external, which should only be visible in the menu when the action is, or sorry, if the file that it's in is a diff, but otherwise it should not. So if that was the case, if I went over to this context menu, now we have edit, we have diff, we don't have toggle down there, we have here. Say open and override diff in the external tool. Now there's actually more work that has to happen here. This was called open external, I believe. That's what I put there. Yes. So if that was just in the context menu. So we don't see it there. We don't see it here. We see override audit, open external override, paste from history. Oh. That might not be doing what we want just yet. There's more work that has to happen here. Package name override is diff. Action is diff. Okay. Action equals open. This is the description command. The description, I always say command, the description method. The purpose of this is to figure out to tell Sublime what the command should look like in a menu. Action.title case and override. So normally it would say diff override blah. Here we might say action equals externally diff instead of diff, like so, which would make, oops, this say externally diff override paste from history instead of the thing that it was, which was the actual action title case. That's why there was an underscore in there before. So we're seeing it in a diff, but we're also seeing it here, which is not what we want. We don't see it on a report, so that's nice. We're not going to see it in the title because we haven't added it to the tab context menu yet. So let's do that as well. We're going to copy that just for here. For toggle, I guess, yeah, we could just make this one open external and remove both of those. Oh, was that too much? It might have been too much. We removed something that we did not mean to remove, I think. It used to be, oh, sorry, it just used to be toggle and delete, and now it's toggle open. Oh, so the problem actually is that these lines, oops, these lines did not used to be here. I think that's better like so. Look how nice that little diff line there is, you know, when it actually works. So now I should be able to, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. That should say externally diff, which well, it shouldn't, but it does. And that one says externally diff, and that one doesn't. So that part's good, and that part's good. So we can scooch that. Now let's look. that's the description method being done. If we actually try to do it, it should generate an error in the console. So let's try that. Externally diff, and yeah, it says unknown action for override context open external. So good. We can't accidentally trigger this command until we know that this does what we want. So that's nice. Let's see. This doesn't have an is enabled. So expired is equal to, so package override is diff. Oh, if true if is diff is not none. Oh, that's the problem. Okay, so if action equals open external and is diff is true, and is diff, yeah, because we don't want it to be is not none, because that that is diff is none when it's a report. It's true when it's a diff, and it's false when it's an override. So that's why it's doing what it's doing. So we want this to do this slightly differently. We want to say return true if is diff, else false. I believe should be the proper way to do that. And this line can go back to being that. So that's nice. Now, I think that means it doesn't appear there. We can diff it and we can delete it. We can diff it and we can delete it. We can externally diff or edit or delete. We can diff or delete. We can, sorry, yeah. In the tab, it works. In the there, it works. Here in a report, it's still not being there. That is an irritating habit of mine. And there, it's there. So I need to recreate the package report so I can see that it doesn't happen there. And it doesn't happen in things that are just regular resources that aren't considered overrides. So that part is also working. Now, we have diff single override, swap diff edit view. We actually want a new one of these in here. Whoops. Oh, that one. And that's an example of my paste from history override in action, by the way. We might say open diff externally, and the command here is, I've already forgotten because that's how good I am. Open external. Thus. Now, this command, the is visible, makes things visible in the menu. It also hides them from the command palette. So with that in place, if I went over here, I can diff this over. I can diff a single override. I can't toggle this one. Over here, I can swap the diff edit view, but that's all I can do. I can delete it. I can get a report. I can swap it. Over here in the actual diff, I can open diff externally, which still does nothing. And over here in the package report, I cannot open diff externally. So that part is good. Now there's actually one more step that needs to happen in this thing. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. If the action is open external, Then true if is diff and OA setting. Oh, it has to be in the menu too, I think. Or maybe it's not because that's just a top level. Yeah. I don't think that's something that actually appears in the menu, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Tools, override audit, diff single override. Yeah, it doesn't have options for the current thing here, only top level one. So that part doesn't matter. Override audit, that's Sublime settings, external diff. Still fits, nice. Okay, so the idea here is if the action is open external, then this should only be visible, i.e. selectable from the menus, if this is a diff and the OA setting for external diff returns a truthy value, which it will if it's an object and it will if it's a string, but it won't if it's the default value of false. So that means that, for example, if I was to right click here, it still doesn't appear and it's not supposed to. Here it doesn't appear and it's not supposed to. In the report, it doesn't appear, but it's not supposed to. Here, it does appear, but if I was to, oh, I can't do it that way, can I? Pref override audit settings like so. If I did this, but with all of the lines, now the default value for external diff comes into play, which is false. And if that was the case, I'll just move that over there for the time being. Even though this is a diff, that no longer appears there because I don't have an external diff tool defined, which is exactly what we want to have happen. I'll bring this one back. And similarly, if I said external diff was set to, let's say, diffy do, because we do have a plan to potentially make this work with Sublimerge or other packages that can provide a command who you can maybe have support a specific type of arguments or something. Then we need this to still be available in places where that is a string, and that is also working. So that is absolutely perfect. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, I know. And put this back. That part sort of kind of bothers me. Now we can close that. So that's all good. Now we can actually get in actually executing this thing. And that's sort of where this code comes into play. Now the question is, this does not happen, this part doesn't happen in a thread. We don't need to have this thing figure out the package and the override because that information is already available. It's part of this view context thing. We have the package name we need. We have the override we need. I guess what we don't have is the package info for that thing. But we could do this. Third diff override is not something we want to do here. A lot of these call top level. Open override doesn't need to be in the thread. Third freshen override does kind of need to be in the thread. Let's jump up there and see what that does. If you're supposed to confirm, it asks. Otherwise, it creates an override freshen thread with a specific package name and a specific override. Now, I believe this is happening in a thread, and we can actually jump to that code. It's down here. It's a background worker thread, which means all the setup is done for us, and we can just call process. The idea of a background worker thread, and again, I think if we did that, we could open that particular file. It takes um, when you created the spinner text and a callback. It calls process while it does the spinner, it calls process. Now, I can't remember. Actual spinner does what? It just ticks drawing stuff until it knows that it's time for it to go away. So the spinner happens while the external code is happening. So when the thread goes away, the spinner goes away. That's nice. Now this happens in a thread. When it calls process, it needs to call package info on package name to get the package info that it needs. So yeah, let's create an external, open external diff thread. That's different than the thing we created here, right? Yeah. This is sort of making me think that maybe this code could have been better placed in the other thing if there's going to be one of these anyway. And then that whole hackety thing we did is not strictly necessary, come to think of it. But, what can we do? So let's copy this whole thing, and then we can see what we need to implement. Report generation thread, package report. These are all report threads, bulk report thread. These again are things that are all things that don't necessarily need to be, or they don't necessarily need to be all in one file. So that was sort of an unfortunate turn of events on our part. We'll do it here, I think. Okay, and all of these things have this splitter between them, which incidentally makes the flake thing open diff in external program thread. It's a background worker thread. So let's see. For specific override in a specific file, in a specific package, execute the configured external diff program to diff that file, that override, against the currently used base file. The base file is temporarily extracted out of the package file to a temporary file. Now, let's say we don't want to do that per se. Message we want process is the thing. What happens? We can get the view, the package, the override. Let's say external diff thread not given a view or package. Unable to externally diff blah, no such package, unable to earn no. Let's just trace through this code so we can describe how it works. If there's not a view or there's not a package name, then someone has not called us correctly. We need those particular items. I don't think we necessarily need a view, though. That might be something that doesn't need to be here. View is needed because we're going to fiddle-faddle with stuff. We may have chosen poorly as We need package info and override. So let's see where this is actually referenced. We give it a package info and an override, and that's all we give it. Whereas the freshen that doesn't have anything special there. So why is there a one of those? I assume. We don't care about the view. The freshen needs to have a view because it needs to be able to find the X next to an override and remove it for certain situations. So we're going to say we don't care about that. We'll just say if there's not a package name, then nothing to do. Oh, I don't know what self.result actually does here now that I think about it. We'll find out in a moment, I suppose. Package info creates package information structure specifically for a given package. When if you only provided one package, it makes sure to see if there is a Sublime package file in the installed packages or the shipped packages folder. Then it also finds information about the unpacked folder to know if it exists. And if that package doesn't exist, then you can't do this. And if the package file doesn't exist, there's nothing to diff externally because there's no overrides. This is a test. Package file returns the name of the shipped package or the installed package. If it'll return none if there isn't one, if there's just an unpacked folder. Now this is the part where we would actually do something. We end up with a result. Now I believe the background worker thread would do something with that result. So let's go ahead and pass here. And let's just jump to background worker thread in threads. It calls process. Then it calls starts the spinner, calls process. If the callback's not none, then it calls the callback. So that's not going to happen here. So the real magic is, what the hell does self.result do for anybody? I can't remember. Nothing exciting there. Does something happen over here? No. That's interesting. In any case, we have a package info and an override, so we can do this. And I think that's all we need to put over here instead of that. Except we might want to do that. So the base name is extracting that. Do we have any error handling in this command? That error handling happens actually in here, doesn't it? That may have been a design flaw on our part. Well, it kind of needs to be decoupled. So yeah, let's say that's probably kosher. Once it does that, it can be done. Error while the other one probably says error while diffing, right? Diff thread. It doesn't really say anything. Error while externally diffing, let's say. That is totally something that is not a nice name, and we could copy that. And if we found that context override command thing, then oops, LF action is equal to open external in our, oh, where'd window come from? Target dot window is the window that we have to provide this thing. Extracting override, let's say, is the message that this thread should provide. We don't need a callback, so we can just say none, I think. And the name list is package. We need to see, I've already forgotten. No, not the external diff thread. Window spinner text callback, which is none. And then the keyword arguments, and the arguments that this thread required were a package name, which is package name, and an override, which is override. I think that might actually do this thing. So let's see. Now over here in this diff, I can pick externally open, externally diff override. Well, nothing happened. Maybe I need to do that and reload everything. Oh, I probably should have started it, huh? Like so. Okay. That might help. Okay. Now, if I externally diff this, doop, what do we got? Sublime. Oh, I need to. Remember that time in order to test things, we changed. Yeah, thanks. You can go away now, hover pop up. That's not cool. That's not cool, package dev. Remember the time we did that? Okay, so we can say externally diff override. And it pops out into the tool the way we want. And we could also from this menu say open diff externally. So that's nice. So the only thing that's really an issue here per se is the context menu name for that. Oh, try it from up here. Externally diff opens. Even if this package is, this file over here is the one with the keyboard focus, it still works. What we don't like is that description method, because we're saying externally diff. I think we need to change the stub there. Override audit open diff of %s externally mod override as the thing it returns. Like so. Just so that in the menu it says open diff of paste from history.py externally. instead of externally diff. And that's just because, that looks nice. I keep doing that wrong. And that's just because over here, I guess we need to zoom that panel. Here it says open diff externally, so here it should also say open diff of blah externally, and here it should open diff of blah externally. So I think that is pretty much our features, and we're pretty much at our 2-hour time limit. We're actually a little under here. So let's just vet our changes and see if we've remembered everything. We probably should have brought that thread in. Yes, we probably should have. Let's stage that. We documented that. Yeah, that's probably good if we're going to fiddle with this thing. We could do that as its separate commit, but that's kind of annoying. So let's not. Here is our magic open diff and external program thread thing. It takes an argument name, a keyword argument for package name and override. If you don't give it a package name, it gets mad. If you give it a package that doesn't exist, it gets mad. If that package doesn't have any items in it, it gets mad. We should probably test what that self.result actually does. Now we get the base name by extracting, and that might be none. Oh, there's actually something there. We may want to do something with. So let's try that before we continue on with this operation. I just noticed that now. Yeah, we can close that. That one's cool. That's the console. That's the diff. That's the wrong way. We're going to do that. We're going to pass it a package name. And we're going to pass it an override plus bloop, like so. Okay. And then if I came over here and said open diff of paste from history.py externally, we see something here that says that we wish word wrap wasn't turned on. Let's clear that console so we can see exactly what's happening there. Okay, open diff of blah externally. It says error loading pybloop cannot find file in Sublime package. We don't see any actual error message happening here. But if we came down here, we might say self.result equals unable to extract Pact file for diffing, let's say. Make sure that whole package is reloaded. What does this do now? That's still generating an error. Did we see any message in the... No, we did not. Now, I can't remember what self.result was supposed to do. Let's see. Assigned, 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 assigned. All assigned, assign, assign. Assign, assign, assign. What the hell was I thinking when I did that? I wish I could remember what the point... Is that something that's actually native to a thread? Because I would have thought that it would be logged, all else being equal. But it does not seem to be, and I don't know why. So I'm probably going to have to investigate that because we are running dangerously shy of time here. We could throw an exception in that case. Yeah. Otherwise, all errors would happen inside the diff code, right? Okay, so let's try that. Look at it again, and we'll actually look at it here. We get the package name, we get the override. Default them to none if they weren't provided. If there's no package name provided, get mad and log an error saying, someone did something wrong. Get the info for the package. If that doesn't exist, then someone passed us a package that doesn't exist. That says that there's no overrides, which would be a problem. We try to extract the override, create the package name, get the arguments for the external diff. If base name is none, then it's unable to extract package to diff it. We could say if not args, we could say self.result, and I don't know why we're doing that even. There we go. Nothing done, no external diff tool configured. Seems like a nice way to go. Otherwise, we create the thread and start it. Let's sort of clean that up a little bit. And we might say, instead of args, external diff spec. It's equal to that. And if any error happens there, do that. So if we came back to here, that's all of that code there. We can stage that hunk. We do want to fix that missing broken line. Now here we can say if the action is open external, then start that thread, but maybe not with that part in it. We don't want to put the bloop in there, I don't think. It doesn't seem like a good idea. That was just to get an override that doesn't exist. We'll have to try that again and fix it. We can stage that hunk. In the description, sorry, in the is, I believe that should be is visible, but it doesn't show in the little panel there, which is interesting. Oh, sorry, description and is visible. So here, if the action is, oh, is that, let's open that in the editor. Yeah, those were probably pretty tight before, so that's okay, I think. So let's stage that. So the description of the thing, if it's open external, is slightly different than everything else. That's okay. And if the action is open external, then it's only visible if this is a diff and there's the external tool configured. So stage that hunk. Now in the context menu, we want to be able to, whoops, open external. In the tab context menu, we want to be able to open this externally. And we also want to have that in the command palette. This also has to end up in the README file in the list of commands. But I'll do that after the stream ends because no one needs to see that. So that is this. I'm going to say implement the initial external diff open command. And I'll go ahead and commit that. And as the previous commit, I will modify those two things to have nicer messages when the stream is over. And if we come back over here, we have implemented the external diff, and we have also included this command in the menus. And as I have talked about before, I wanted to do it this way to make it a little easier. I mean, as we can see, we could, if we wanted to, clearly have that command appear from inside the actual file It could say instead of diff override, it could say also open diff externally or something, or externally diff. We could do that. I don't know that I necessarily like that because this is already kind of a clunky system as it is, and I'm trying to think of better ways to go about that. But this is what we're going to do for the time being, and we'll see what happens. We still have time in the version 1 series to tack more stuff on there. But that is going to be the end of the stream for tonight. I'm going to go back and fix up the messages in those commits to look a little bit nicer and see if I can figure out why exactly my threads are setting a self.result, because I don't remember what that's used for. It should be logged somewhere unless I've broken something terribly. But in any case, that is something to happen at another time. So this is OdatNurd saying thank you so much for watching this live stream. We're very close to being able to put out the next point release. And actually, I think this would be override audit version 1.3 instead, or 1.2 instead of 1.1.3, because we have added more functionality in a backwards compatible way. Our version number is on the way up, and this is actually fairly functional the way it is. Now, I do need to do more integration testing on my MacBook and my Windows machine to make sure that this works there as well, but we're making good progress, and that's great. So again, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more live streams. I'll be doing another one next Sunday at the same time. Hello to everybody that's watching right now. I have another channel, of course. There's a link in the description below. I'm currently working on some plugin videos for making custom build targets, because there have been a few questions about that, and it occurred to me that we could do one video on how to set up a stub for creating a custom build as a jumping off point for people that want to have more control over their builds. And then as an example, show how to add um, custom variables. So those videos will be coming soon. I am still working on my package development course, still kind of slow going there. And I'm still trying to catch up on all the time that I lost being sick and time that I was hoping to be in pre-production for videos. Thank you so much again for watching. I'm just going to go now because I keep rambling incessantly. So until the next live stream, remember to stay sublime.